Howdy, Connection Group leaders. Happy Thursday. I am broadcasting to you from David Jenkins' office. And the reason why I'm doing that is because he's not here. There was an open spot, so I took it. Now, if you've not heard, this is pretty cool. Shay Jenkins, David and Phyllis's youngest, is getting married this weekend. So they are in full-blown wedding mode. That's where he's at. Can I just ask you a favor? If you've got his number, shoot him a message and tell he and Miss Phyllis congratulations, because this is a big deal. They're excited, and rightfully so, picking up a daughter-in-law, and it's just going to be a really, really fun time. So we want to celebrate with them and the good stuff that God's doing in their lives. Man, I love that guy. I love how he serves his church, and I just want to honor him in the celebration. Also, by the way, don't let me forget, his chair is awful. We need to get him a new chair too, but that's a different story. We get to talk about 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Really fun passage, really familiar passage. I suspect your folks will be excited to talk about this one because it's an encouraging one. So let's dive in. There's some good stuff here. I'm so thankful that we live in a world where pastors don't have to defend themselves anymore, because people don't criticize pastors anymore. Aren't you glad that that's the case, right? I'm sure you've never, ever said something online about another pastor and their work, or questioned their efforts, right? Well, that's true today. That was true back in Paul's day as well. A little bit more slowly that way that process worked than it is now. But pastors still sometimes have to defend the work that they're doing for the Lord. And it's not always wrong to question motives. It's not always wrong, certainly, to question bad theology. That should be readily apparent to us, and that's certainly what Paul does from time to time. But the reason why this whole thing sparked was because Paul was having to defend, no, I really do work for the Lord here. Like, you can and need to trust what I'm telling you, right? And then he offers this story that's incredible on something that God did in his life. And he does speak in the third person, and I agree. I think most scholars would tell you the reason why he did this is, even while he's trying to prove his point that the Lord is using him, he's still being humble in that, which is so important. We need to embrace and remember that kind of humility when God uses us, and he's going to. The efforts and the focus need to remain on the Lord and what he did. And that's certainly where he's going here. So God either gives him a vision or calls him up to heaven. He's not allowed to say what he saw. John was going to be the one to get to tell us what he saw in heaven, which was very, very cool. But God gave Paul something really, really special, and he also gifted Paul in some special ways. And as a result, Paul, who, by the way, was already a pretty arrogant dude, as you can imagine when you read kind of his backstory, he was incredibly confident and well accomplished. God, in an effort to shape Paul, watch that word really carefully, in an effort to shape Paul, God allowed him to be tormented in some way by the enemy. We call that the thorn in the flesh. And so it comes down to this, a couple things that I think is worth talking about with your class. Number one, don't be a people that brags about the fact that the enemy is attacking you, and so you must be doing something right. Have you ever heard that phrase used? I've used it before, sort of unwittingly. The focus can't ever be on number one, what we're doing, and number two, what the enemy's doing. We don't glorify the enemy even in the least bit. We kind of ignore him, right? It's all about what God is doing or what God is allowing. We don't give the enemy the time of day, not in that sense. So God is allowing this hard thing to happen to me. And yes, he's allowing the enemy to do this in my life. But the enemy's not the point. But by the way, that doesn't mean that I'm super important and I'm dangerous to hell. That's just arrogance sort of couched in spiritualism, right? The focus is on, man, this is what Jesus is doing in my life. So really make that clear to your classes. I think that's important. Number two, we need to be asking the questions when we endure hardship. Lord, what is it in my life that you're wanting to teach or to shape? How are you changing me? So often, and I do this too, man, when we run into hardship, and I think we should, no, I don't even think, I know we should go to the Lord and say, Lord, this is happening, I need help. But we ought to be asking God the question, instead of just, Lord, fix this. It's broken, I'm hurt, I need, just fix it. Ask the Lord the question, what do you want to teach me right now? Is there something I'm missing? And by the way, sometimes hardships are self-induced, right? So, okay, Lord, did I do something that opened the doorway for me to be having this struggle in my life? And if so, help me to repent of it and learn from that so that I can change. But if not, Lord, if you're just allowing something in my life so that I can be shaped, show me what it is that you want to shape, and then Jesus do it, because that's what I want. And the last thing is, I would make a big deal out of the word sufficient. When you really break that word down, like, there are times when we talk about grace in the Bible, when we talk about God's magnanimous grace, like he's rich in grace and it's overwhelming and overlapping and we have more than enough, and we do. But in this particular instance, Paul said, you know what, I had just enough. It was sufficient. He's kind of implying what I went through, just nearly killed me, or at least it felt like it was killing me, but God gave me just enough for me to survive. We're a people that ought to take joy in the fact when God gives us just enough. It was really, really hard, but you know what? God gave me enough and I survived. I'm still here. And by the way, even if it was just enough, just barely enough, that's still so generous of him. Think about that, because God doesn't have to help us with anything. He doesn't owe us anything. He gives us, at times, more than enough, and sometimes just enough, but he gives us what we need. And we can celebrate that and be overjoyed by that and take pleasure when we run into hardships. What he says in verse 10, take pleasure when we run into hardships of all kind, because we know that Jesus is going to give us just enough. And that's a great deal. So when you finish your particular trial that you are enduring, you may end up looking more like Frodo at the end of The Lord of the Rings as opposed to Hulk Hogan at the end of WrestleMania 3. But Jesus gave you enough. So rejoice in that. Celebrate that with your classes this week. Guys, we love y'all. Again, text the Jenkins, tell them congratulations, and we'll see you on Sunday. Bye.